Welcome to today's video. Hello, window light. Window light, window light. Today's video is about emotional trauma and grief and loss, as I say these things with a big smile. It's about dealing with the trauma that comes back, okay? So if you are looking for a nice, neat bow to wrap up healing, or some kind of container that like starts and ends and it's finite, that's not what emotional trauma and grief, loss, these types of things are like. There's no neat bow to tie them up. So I'm going to give you just what I've used in my own life to understand and work with healing that I've had to do with emotional trauma, with grief, certainly, with all of these things that can sort of stop you, especially if you're an entrepreneur, especially if you're someone who's walking a slightly unconventional path where it takes you a lot of energy to just do what you need to do every day. I know it takes me, significant sounds like an understatement. It takes an insane amount of energy for me to be who I am in the world, to make videos, to write, to see my clients, to coach, to create joy and presence and optimism and faith in myself. It takes a lot of energy. And so when I'm healing or going through an emotional trauma, it adds to it. So I need to be mindful of, excuse me, I need to be mindful of exactly where my energy is coming from, where I need to siphon it off into whether I'm going through something emotional or just regular life. I need to be mindful of that. So that's what today's video is on, and specifically about not freaking out when you have to come back to healing, okay? So, number one, healing is not a finite, there's no finite point to when you have healed and you're done with it. You may very well feel at a certain point in time that you've come to some internal ownership or control or feeling of forgiveness or goodness in your heart about things that have happened to you that have been emotionally traumatic. And that is fantastic. That's the point of healing, right? Is to come to a place where you can continue to live, continue to exist while having had crappy things happen. So that's good. That's okay. But do not think that just because you're at that point that later on in the future, if triggers happen, if circumstances shift, that all of your healing is done and complete, and then you freak out, let's say when a trigger does hit, and you have to then deal with this again. I went through this actually with my parents at the beginning of 2016 and still to this day, where I have come to a really great place with them and our relationship and things that have happened. But every now and again, I'll think I'm doing great, and all of a sudden life is like, psh, bitch smacks me and says, well, no, you got to deal with this. And so I have to find it within me to not tailspin and say, well, shouldn't I be somewhere different? Shouldn't I be more healed from this? Or shouldn't I be past this by now? I deal with it very differently, and that's what I need to take stock of, and that's what I do take stock of, is how are my actions different than they were a couple years ago? How long am I in this state of emotional turmoil after I'm triggered? And how quickly can I move out of it? And how peaceful am I with, how much at peace am I after I've gone through this emotional cycle with them, let's say. How at peace are you with how you've responded? So just know if the trigger comes back around and something else arises that makes you respond differently or in survival mode or freak out mode, just stop and check yourself and say, and really ask yourself, why does it need to be all figured out? Human beings, we're so wired to have the answers. I know I am. Holy shit. I need the answer. I need it properly wrapped up. I need to know not just answer A, I need to know answer A, B, C, D, E. I need to know the path. I need to know if it's going to be okay. All of these things we need. But if you really look at it, it's just the nature of a human being to want that. Because there are elements out of our control, because life is uncertain, because we all know we're going to die at some point, it's scary. And so how do you live in a way where that is not your initial response to things? I've had to train myself constantly, and train myself as that being the biggest thing I needed to practice was my responses not coming out of survival mode and not seeking certainty and everything to be finite. And at this point, I'm not dealing with it well, and at this point, I am dealing with it well. That's not how healing works. So if you are going through something that is traumatic, if you're going through something that has you feeling grief-stricken or some kind of a loss, or you yourself are going on your own healing journey, you just give yourself the freedom to know it doesn't end. Even 10 years from now, you still might be triggered in a certain way, and that does not take away from or mean you haven't properly done the healing work you needed to do. Healing is very personal. It's very subjective. It looks different for every single person. But one thing that is consistent is that nobody has figured out a way where it's just, okay, I'm done with it. I mean, maybe people have. I don't know those people. I know really successful people, high-performing people, people who have great lives, they still come up against things that they thought they, dealt with years ago. And that's not because you're a bad person or you don't know how to do it. That's just because we're hardwired that when those things trigger us back into survival mode, we're hardwired. It's like air. We're always going to want air. We're always going to need air. When you don't have air, you're going to react a certain way. So that's the very, very most basic level of survival, right? But emotional trauma does that to us too. It puts us back into survival mode where we feel heavy and where we feel like death almost, right? And where we feel like it's the worst case scenario and you're so heavy and you're so distraught and in despair. That's akin to not having air. That's akin to not having air. I swear I felt like I didn't have air when I was going through that stuff with my parents. Sounds dramatic, but that's how it manifests. So if you're going through this entire point of this video, it's not super prescriptive like my other videos, like 5 ways to do this, but this is more mindset and really just giving yourself the permission that it's okay. It's okay to have to heal. A few years after you thought you were done healing, it's okay to have things come up and respond a certain way. And it's okay to bring yourself back. It's not okay, it's necessary to bring yourself back, check in with yourself, offer up a lot of kindness and patience with yourself, and recognize that it's a process. So that's what I do. That's what I do for myself. And it is the thing that helps me actually move back into the healing mode and not into self-flagellation or self-loathing or making myself wrong that I should be at a certain point. That's really the key. Staying out of that space is what's going to help you move forward, feel clear, feel better. It's going to help you do all of those things. So that's that. I hope this helps you if you're going through something. Always, I love hearing from you guys. You can email me and let me know what's going on for you and if this helps. I always advocate to share this. If you are going through something traumatic, a loss, all of us in our own way are going through it. Please share this if this helped you with someone who could benefit and just get some relief from it. That's the whole goal of all of these videos, is for me to impart something that can help you and for you to impart something that can help someone else, okay? So share this video, like it somewhere down here, and I'll see you on our next one.